Hey there, horror fans! It's me, James Ferguson, coming to you with episode 83 of Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. This week's guests are Drew Edwards and Paulo Hernandez. Drew is the creator and writer of Halloween Man, a long-running horror webcomic, and Paulo is one of the artists of the new Halloween Man anthology comic Bat City Special, currently on Indiegogo. The comic serves as a spooky love letter to the city of Austin, Texas, and it is clear from speaking to these two creators that they care deeply for that town. There's still plenty of time to back the Indiegogo campaign. Rewards include numerous Halloween Man comics, as well as original artwork, commissions, t-shirts, and more. More information can be found at HalloweenMan.com. Drew can be found online on Instagram as @Drew_Halloween. He's also one of the hosts of the Castle of Horror podcast. Paulo can be found on his official site, fivelinegraphics.net. Hey, if you're digging this show, can you do me a solid and leave a positive review on iTunes? It would only take a couple minutes, and it helps spread the word for the show. Thanks. Alright, that is it for the news and updates this week, so let's dig right into episode 83 of Funny Book Splatter with my guests, Drew Edwards and Paulo Hernandez. So, tell me a bit about Halloween Man. How, if you had to pitch the book to somebody, how would you describe it to someone?
So my elevator pitch for Halloween Man is it is best described as the weird adventures of a zombie superhero and his sexy mad scientist girlfriend as they fight everything from vegetarian vampires, space dwarves, the Loch Ness Monster, the Invisible Man, etc., etc., etc. In case you aren't picking up on this comic book is a bit on what people would call the quirky side. Mm-hmm. So, the tonal description of it, like if I were to say what is the tone of this thing, it is what would happen if you took an 80s horror film and slammed it up against a 1960s comic book. So it's a macabre version of the Fantastic Four, if you will.
That doesn't sell someone, I don't know what will. I think you got this down pat. So that's but I mean you've been talking about it for a while, right?
I've been doing Halloween Man for almost 18 years this October. I started even just developing the character and the universe when I was fresh out of high school, and I'm almost 40 now. So, I've been saying this a lot. If this comic book was a child, I'd be sending it off to college, and I probably spent that much money on it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and where do we find Halloween Man in this new special, the Bat City Special?
Well, the Bat City Special, one of the things that we're talking about today is a project that's near and dear to my heart because I have been living in Austin for the better part of a decade now, and even before then, I've always loved. I'm a Texan, as you probably can tell that from my accent, but I always loved our state's capital. Like even before I had been living in Dallas for the better part of a decade, and then I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years. And when I decided to move back to Texas, I knew I was going to live in Austin because anytime I would come down to Austin for a convention or a concert, I just loved it here. And there's a wonderful artistic community in Austin. So the thing is about the Bat City Special is it's not one particular story. It's 5 different stories done by artists that I have met through the Austin artistic community, such as our friend Paulo here. And there's several other wonderful artists on this book. So, it's a real chance to not only have some state pride and some civic pride, but to really, put some of these local Austin artists on the national stage.
That's great. Yeah. So Paulo, how did you kind of get into the mix with this? Because it looks like there's a number of different great artists in here. So how did you jump into the Halloween Man bandwagon?
Just getting to know Drew. Drew has been like really, really cool over the past like few like a while now. That I met Drew and I saw his comic. I thought it was great. And when he started talking to me about actually drawing for him, I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity for me. You know, I loved the characters and I loved everything about it. And he approached me and he wanted me. He saw my art and he really liked it. And I was scared because I couldn't believe that somebody wanted me to, I guess, handle his characters. That was his baby, and he was willing to like hand me his baby and like, I want you to create art with my characters and with all that. And I just thought it was like a great honor. And so it was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome getting to know Drew a little bit better, and I already knew a lot of the other artists that are a part of this, and it's great. I love working on this book. It's really awesome.
You actually bring up a really good point, and Drew, other folks have contributed to the Halloween Man mythos over the years. How does that feel? Because I feel like that could be something, you know, like Paulo just said, that's your baby, right? Like that's something that is yours. How does it feel to like let someone else play with your toys in that instance?
I've always enjoyed the collaborative aspect of comics, and if you're to go over the entire artistic history of Halloween Man, you're going to see a lot of different art styles and a lot of people at different stages in their career. And I've always enjoyed seeing people's different takes on these characters. Because art's a big, I'm a writer and, but art is a big part of a comic book. And, actually, what Paulo was just saying here, one of the things that initially attracted to me to working with him in particular is there's a yearly event here in Austin called Nerd Cave, and it's like a little mini con, and it's all local people, and it's got this very family vibe to it. It's like a family reunion because it's people, some of the people I that's the only time, because we're all busy, that's the only time of year that I get to hang out with them for any length of time and just talk shop and everything. And a lot of the times I would be next to, certain people. And there was this one year I was next to him and he started, drawing this picture of Lucy, who is the female lead in the comic, the quote unquote sexy mad scientist. And, I was really taken with his version of her and I wanted to see him draw more of her. And, that's sort of how I go about developing any collaboration. Is it always like there's something about their art that sparks me wanting to build a story, and develop that collaboration. And the wonderful thing about this special in particular is you're not only going to see a lot of different artistic styles, you're going to see a lot of different tones, because like some of the stories in this special are very comedic and funny. And then you have other stories that, are straight up like an action, just like slam bang action kind of thing. And then there's, other stories that are like straight up horror and very creepy and dark. And, those are all things, those are all through lines that are, you would talk about the mythology of Halloween Man. Those are all things that exist in the overall, mythos of Halloween Man. But, with each particular story, we were kind of able to zero in on one particular aspect of these characters and really give people a good snapshot of what these characters are about if you're to boil them down to their essence.
That's really awesome. I really like that Drew really gave us a story to accentuate what we already wanted to draw. And that was really a great part of it, because he gave me a story that I really wanted to draw. He gave me the strip, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. I can't wait to draw that, because he knew like what I like to draw, and he based it on that. And I think he did that with every other artist, and it just came out great.
So can you tell us a little bit about your story within the special?
Yeah, well, my story revolves around Lucy, and where she's fighting the evil Robotica, the queen of metal. And Drew was he told me kind of what she would look like, and I designed a version of Robotica, and he loved it, and I was like, awesome! I can't believe I created a character in the Halloween mythos. Like that was really cool for me. And but I love drawing that and fighting. Lucy fights Robotica, and there's a resolution. I don't know if I want to give it away.
That, but I think you got enough in terms of like the gist of it. So it's funny there. So in that case, Drew saw you drawing a picture of this character and was like, I want to write a story for you with that character because you clearly drew her well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically it. Like he did a version of Lucy that I really like, and I love, aside from horror, this is a horror talk, but I also love retro, like vintage sci-fi, particularly anything with a lot of robots. And I had known that I had seen him draw a lot of robots, and I also had in my head like I wanted a this is gonna sound a little goofy and perhaps a bit perverse, but there was this particular pinup artist who was very popular in the 80s, and he even did an Aerosmith cover, and I can't remember his name. He was a Japanese artist, and I'm sorry that I'm blanking on it, but he always did these quote-unquote sexy female robots, and I really wanted something kind of in the vein of that as this villain, and I just knew that Paulo, he could deliver on that, and he did, because a lot of the times when we're trying to design new villains for the series, you go through a lot of design process, whereas with Robotica, he actually nailed it on the first try. There was never really much back and forth. It was like, well, he sent me like the design, and it was like, this is what I'm thinking. And the character had this like very smug, aside from being, like having that like cheesecake quality that I wanted, she had this sort of smugness about her facial expression. And then I was like, that's what you want in a bad guy. You want a character that's just gonna, emote well and be sinister, and serve this story, which is this crazy sort of pulp sci-fi story that could have been out of it like an EC comic in like the 50s.
So is that some of the stuff that has kind of influenced you over the years? The kind of old pulpy kind of EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt kind of stuff?
I love EC Comics. I mean, that's definitely a big influence on me, particularly, I like Tales from the Crypt and, Bolt of Horror and the horror stuff, but I also really loved Weird Science. And one of the best things about EC Comics, obviously, was like the covers. And, there was this company called Gladstone that they were reprinting them back in the 80s and, the 80s into the 90s. And I always remember again, I'm going to be a bit crass here, but they would have these like women in like overly tight space suits. They were usually pretty buxom, and they would be cowering with these like slimy, crazy lizard or slug-like aliens. And the imagery, it was so lurid and pulpy, but also like beautiful. Like the covers were beautiful works of art, aside from being the exact sort of thing that's going to capture a preteen boy's imagination quite a bit. And, so like a lot of the images that you see in Halloween Man are definitely drawn from like kind of almost wanting to take the stories of the covers, because in the EC comics there was never a linking story, so there was always this kind of desire to see like a continuing story with this sort of imagery, whereas like on one cover you would go from dinosaurs to space aliens to werewolves to like a serial killer with a big axe, like if I could like take a needle and thread and sort of thread it all together. That is a lot of what goes into Halloween Man.
Is that something? Do you think that Halloween Man could fill that kind of role, almost like your own crypt keeper in that case? Or but he has his own adventures, so it's almost like he doesn't need to have that kind of space.
I've thought about doing a sort of like Halloween Man anthology. Like that's something I kicked around a lot because I do like the anthology format, but I love these characters. I've put 18 years of my life into them, and this particular special is a kind of anthology. It's just an anthology with either characters that you've come to know because you've been reading this comic for a while, or characters that they may be new to you. Like this might be your introduction to the characters, and it gives you kind of a quick look into what they're about.
So if people aren't familiar with Halloween Man, this is also serves as a good jumping on point to kind of give them an idea of what to expect with this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. As an indie comic creator, I firmly believe that every issue needs to be accessible because every issue could be somebody's first, and I think if I were to say like where's a good jumping on point, this would definitely be a good place to start, because you get pretty much all of the main cast of characters throughout this special.
That's great. So it's kind of a little something for everyone, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Now, and how many stories overall are included in here?
There are 5, and there's also going to be some pinups by another local artist by the name of Jeremy Martinez, and a fully painted cover by an excellent artist named Lou Pons.
Awesome. Now, one thing I was curious was about like why Indiegogo? I feel like Indiegogo might be making like a resurgence, but for a while it was like the poor man's Kickstarter. So I was curious, what made you choose Indiegogo over Kickstarter as a crowdfunding platform?
For one, they allow you to have longer campaigns, so that was a big driving force there. And we all had meetings when we were discussing how this is my first time crowdfunding anything, and because I was in particular worried about it triggering a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, it can be a stressful 30 or 60 days depending on how long you run it.
Yes, and that's absolutely been true with this. It's been a little anxiety inducing, but worth it. And aside from that, Indiegogo has a lot more options for when you set it up, whereas I found Kickstarter, when we looked into it, Kickstarter was a little bit more limited. And they took a bigger portion of your funds, which I want, because of, I'm trying to get my creative team paid. This is how they're getting paid. I wanted, if for whatever reason we are not able to reach the entire goal, I still want there to be money to be doled out. I still want there to be money to go towards printing. I don't want it to be sort of situation when it's sort of all for naught. So, Paula will bear me out. Like we had meetings where we discussed all of this at length.
Oh yeah. We had discussions about everything, even all the perks that we were going to do and stuff like that. And a lot of those perks actually came to fruition, and we even got new perks. So it was really awesome to see all that stuff come out on the Indiegogo, and people have been getting them, and which is really awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always curious because crowdfunding, I speak to a lot of folks that are on either Indiegogo or for Kickstarter, and I'm always curious as to what kind of goes into those kind of decisions, because it is a marathon too, because it can be stressful as you're kind of like checking this, I'm sure, repeatedly, and as you see every new backer come through, like almost like singing a little thing of joy, saying, yes, another person who believes in this to put their money down and try it out.
Well, I think my primary concern with this particular project was, even though it's Texas centric, I didn't want people who are not from Texas to feel alienated, like we were somehow like they would not enjoy it as much. And thankfully, so far that hasn't seemed the case. Like, we've had backers from all over the country, but that was in the back of my mind. And what you're saying is not wrong. Like, every time there is an email saying that, we have a new backer, we have a group chat going on Facebook. I alert everybody that we have a new backer. I'm saying we're this far along, and, we're all actively trying to like stay in touch with each other and encourage each other and be cheerleaders for each other, because we all believe in this and we believe in each other and, what we're trying to accomplish. And you sort of have to be that way about it. It can't be the sort of thing that you feel nonchalant, because if you're not your own biggest fan, nobody's going to do that for you. And you could, the flip side of that is, if you were thinking about crowdfunding, I would stress, like, don't overthink it, because like, I've been driving my wife a little bit crazy, because like, all I talk about is Indiegogo, and like, I read every think piece about it. And like, I like, even though I've had a lot of people telling me that I'm doing great and the crowdfund is doing great, like, I'll go online and I'll go on Google and I'll research it, and they'll be like, oh, you need to be at this point at this particular moment in the crowdfund, otherwise you're not doing it right. And that stuff makes you freak out, and you shouldn't do that to yourself, because at the end of the day, like, your art is more than just, a crowdfund, or, as much as we want this to be successful, I'd say you have to mentally prepare yourself by allowing for downtime. And I mean downtime on two levels. Like, you have to give yourself time to not be thinking about crowdfunding, like, go to a movie, read a book, go for a walk, whatever you need to do. But they're also like, don't freak out if you're not getting, new backers every moment of every day. There is going to be slower, weeks that are slower than others. There's going to be days that are slower than others. And you have to allow for that, because like, the first week we had, like, the very first day when we went live, I remember being elated because we made like $400 within the first day, and I was like jumping for joy. But then the next day we didn't get a new backer at all, and I started feeling like I was going to have like a panic attack over it. And then I had to like talk to other people, and they were like, no, it's like that. You have to allow for that, and you can't be freaking out. And so I would say, if you are thinking about crowdfunding, you need to tether your expectations, because it is a marathon, but marathons are often about endurance and mental toughness as well as speed.
Yeah, I can't imagine that stress for something like that. And but I'm also just picturing you now as like Annie Potts in Ghostbusters. So every time a new backer comes in, we got one.
Well, there's a few things that I love Ghostbusters more than just about everything in this world, so I'll take that.
Now,
I was gonna say, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah,
with the Ghostbusters
I think that's like such. I'm just picturing that for everyone like shouting this person's name from the rooftops, like, we got someone in, they want this is great. But that's exciting, especially like, and I'm sure you had people that came in for like names you recognize, whether they were fans or people that you've spoken to before. But that first person a person that you didn't recognize coming in has to be like a whole new level of excitement, because it's like, here's just some random person possibly that found this and thought it was cool and threw down money for it.
No offense to the long-time fans, I think I actually like the unfamiliar names, for that very reason. Like, it gets me excited to see that, because, to draw an example on this, I've been putting out this comic for 18 years for one form or another. And very recently I was at a convention in Dallas, and my parents came to a panel that was very well attended, and there was people who had been reading my comic for a while, and they were asking about character. Afterwards, I remember remarking to my mom, like, how was that weird for you? And, cause I never know what my family thinks about this. Like, I kind of sometimes think that they think that, I just put this out and people don't actually read it. So the fact that there were people there and them seeing that I do read it, I think that, that people do read it. I think that was interesting for them. So like what you're saying about like seeing people you're unfamiliar with is really nice, because like when you have the very vocal fans, that's great, but you need every fan. You need every single person that reads it, even if they're not the person doing the fan art or, writing you emails asking about continuity or any of those things. You need literally everybody to make something like this happen.
Well, so far so good. I mean, it seems like you're trucking along nicely on the campaign to date, and it helps that you have such a large back catalog to offer as well. So people that want to try this out and check out some other stuff too can kind of catch up on the previous issues.
Well, it's also I have talented people on my creative team too. Like they're all offering, like Paulo has several perks on there, which are cool. And, a lot of the other artists do too, so the fact that, outside of the back catalog, being something we can offer up and things that tie into that, there's also things that are specific to this, because Austin is filled with amazing, talented people. And I want to bring that to everybody's attention.
Yeah, it sounds like you can you just kind of have to stick your head out the window and find some incredible artist that's right there. Because I've been in Austin, and I can see that kind of vibe just kind of permeates throughout the entire town.
Yeah. Paulo, were you about to say something? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say that. Yeah, I've met so many great artists in my time going through the art community here in Austin, and I've noticed that they're not as well represented anywhere else. And I thought this book would be really awesome. That it's like a showcase of some really good, talented artists from Austin, and everybody that worked on it is from Austin. I think it's great to throw that out there and show people that, Austin has some great, there's even more great artists that aren't in the book that are from Austin also. Maybe it'll be a part 2 of part 2 Bat City special, but it's amazing to see that we were able to come together and throw this out there. And about the perks too, I really liked doing Bat City special specific perks. Like one of the perks was being able to have your picture taken with Halloween Man and Lucy. And I was able to draw Halloween Man, and I'm working on the Lucy one right now. And so it'll be you in like a photo booth sort of thing. And Lucy and Halloween Man will be there taking pictures with you, which I thought was super awesome. I would love to have something like that,
And he did this really great image that people went nuts for on social media of Halloween Man with Bruce Campbell. And like that thing got so many likes because, horror fans like Bruce Campbell. That's no secret. like that thing got so many likes when we put it up on Facebook. Like it just went nuts. So, that is definitely one of the cooler perks that we have up there.
I mean, it sounds like you should be getting money from Austin's tourism board to with the way that this book is shaping up.
I don't know that Austin. Yeah, like there should be Halloween Man Day.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Yeah.
This should,
it
should be handed out at the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. You come to visit Austin, you're in the rest stop or something like that, and it's like, oh, you get a Halloween Man comic to get an idea of what you're in for.
Well, it's funny, we were talking about you being from New York before we started recording, and one of the reasons why the comic book is set in Texas is, and I'm not mad about, but like every other comic book character is from New York or from Gotham City or Metropolis, which are still they're basically New York. And I wanted to write about what I know. I wanted there to be an honesty to it. And, like I'm a born and raised Texas boy. So like I had to give these characters some twang, to make it real and, like give Texas its own hero, so to speak. At the same time, I didn't want him to be like a kind of a cheesy Texas, like he's not Texas themed per se, like it's not Lone Star Man or something. Yeah. The character, it could work in different environments, but it's still got that element to it.
Well, yeah, man, Austin's a little weird, and what's weirder than Halloween Man, right?
He is a tad unusual at that. He eats his bad guys, so he's very economical. He cuts down on prison time.
That's one way to do
that way. He feels bad about it though. Like he's tormented. Like one of the stories, other stories in the comic is Halloween Man actually going to a quote unquote paranormal psychologist. It's drawn by this artist, John Goulson, which, by the way, the best last name ever. And
fitting for a horror book. Yep.
Yeah. But, it's basically Halloween Man going and talking to this doctor about the trauma of being Halloween Man. And, so when I talk about there being like a lot of different sides to this special, like you have a story like Paulo's story where it's like sci-fi action, and then several pages into it, you're going to get like something that's very character driven. And, then, there's another story called The Inhuman Condition, which is drawn by Dan Price. And, it's Solomon hunting down another monster and eating them. And that's there's more to it than that, obviously, but it's very grisly. So like you see like all different sides of this universe.
Well, here's a serious question. Being that it's set in Austin, I mean, and he's eating his bad guys, is there a barbecue opportunity in here?
I should have done a barbecue themed story. Maybe if what Paulo was suggesting about a sequel comes to happen, we'll do a barbecue. Maybe I should just do a Halloween Man versus Leatherface.
Well, look, stretch goal, right? So like, you hit the stretch goals. Maybe that's an opportunity.
There you go. Well, I'll take you out for barbecue. I'm a snob though. Maybe I'll make you barbecue. I'll make you barbecue. What am I getting myself into? My wife is going to listen to this interview and go, Drew, do not promise to make people dinner.
Well, because I think some of the opportunities, the rewards on the Indiegogo campaign are like a local opportunity. Is that correct?
Some of them are local. Most of them, like the one that Paulo was mentioning, are international, like if you want a comic book or a posters or a T-shirt shipped to you, obviously anybody can do that. But we have some perks which are Austin specific. In particular, like we will host a how to create comics class. So like if you're a school system or, you're just curious on how to make comics, if you get this perk, we will come to a location at your chosen time and we will walk you through the process of making a comic book. And, this is something that I have personally done. I actually just did it again at Anime Fest in Dallas. But I used to teach classes on this in Las Vegas. I have a lot of experience with it outside of just my experience of making comics. And, that's an opportunity for people within the Austin area, specifically. But, we don't want to alienate as proud as we are.
I'm just using that as an example. Like, so if you are local, like there's additional perks that you could pick up that'll allow you to get those.
But who knows?
Yeah, potentially barbecues in
there.
Who
knows? Maybe a barbecue dinner now. You never know. Or I will personally, there's still perks that will be revealed. The more money we make, obviously, the more perks. Like I just added new perks today because we hit another goal. So the more money we make, the more perks they're going to be unlocked. And some of the other ones are Austin specific. And, some of them are not like, so, it's really the sky's the limit on how you want to get involved with this.
What is your other background in comics, in general? So like, have you dabbled with this kind of, something like Halloween Man there's nothing quite like Halloween Man, but, in terms of, kind of spooky funny books, in that regard?
I haven't really done like spooky funny books. I've done some comic books for some independent people. Like they want to make their comic book, but they needed someone to draw it basically. So I've drawn some of those and I've drawn some covers. But other than that, I did a lot of conventions and a lot of commissions. And I did publish my own two books on my own. But I haven't been able to get back into it just because, life and all that. But when Drew approached me with this book, I figured I'd use this as my jump start. And now after we were doing this book, I started getting more and more stuff. I'm doing some layouts for another comic for another friend that's going to be going to New York Comic Con. And I'm working on some other deals with trying to make some more like ideas for another comic with someone else as well. So it was sort of my jumping off point to introduce me to do this again, because now I'm like in a good place to start doing more comic work.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to get out there the best way to make comics is to make comics. So you're making more, right, and right. As you get noticed, and even with things, especially with crowdfunding campaigns like this, it seems like the more, especially as you raise more and more funds, that gets noticed. So it's like, oh, clearly this person has an audience. This is something we should be aware of. We should be working to try to get this out there into the world. Right, yeah. But I mean, I really enjoyed doing this comic, and I really hope that I really hope it does well enough to where Drew wants me to come back and do some more comic pages for him, because I really did like it a lot. I mean, that's the best kind of setup there. If you're doing something you love, then that's what you want. Like, you don't want to be stuck drawing a whole bunch of stuff that you don't like. And it sounds like Drew is writing a story that caters to not only your interests, but your strengths. I mean, I've spoken to some artists that are like, if I have to draw another horse in my entire life, I'm going to kill myself. It's just, some things are just like, I don't want to draw. Yeah, and that's what I like. That's what I like about Drew, is that he listens to the artist, and he's like, well, what do you want to draw? What drives you? And like, I would tell him, like, I really like robots, and
I really like the strong female characters. I have a daughter, and she's 10, and I really want to be drawing strong female protagonists. Like even in my comics, like I have one comic that has a strong female protagonist, and I really like that. And when I told him that, he's like, "Oh, great! I have Lucy." He told me about Lucy and everything, and I was like, "Wow, that's awesome!" And I think that was that time that I started drawing Lucy, and he saw me drawing it. And but I really enjoyed all that stuff. And when he told me, you know, I have this great story, and I think you'd like it, you know, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, yes, I want to work on it like right now. And so it would be really awesome to get like maybe a little bit longer script, do a bigger comic for him. That would be great, because I know he's not going to stick me drawing horses, you know.
Unless you want to draw a Western.
Right. Unless I wanted to, yeah.
We could
Halloween
make that
Man in the Old
West.
West.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's honestly though what he's talking about, and that exuberance you're hearing right now. That is like the primary thing I look for in collaborators. You know, that the people aren't just. Because I can't offer as much money as like DC or Marvel. You know, I'm an independent. You know, this is my first time crowdfunding. Like most of the time when I'm trying to make the money to put out books, like I have to raise the money myself somehow. So I'm always on a budget. So what I need is somebody that's going to be passionate about the story and passionate about what the characters are doing and what's going on. Like I look for people who are going to have a good time, because like if they're just doing it for like a paycheck, like this is the wrong book to be on, because like you're not going to get rich doing Halloween Man. You might be able to buy groceries, you know, you might be able to pay a bill, you know, but it's not, you know, it's not like, it's not that kind of project. And it you know, maybe one day it will be. That would be great. You know, if I could have, you know, people who are like getting full-time employee status with benefits and, you know, all that.
First and foremost, it's fun. And that's what I like about it. It's fun.
Yeah, man, that definitely comes out 100%. Like you could hear that in your voices. You could hear that like while this is a labor of love, it's also one of just pure passion. Like you're in there, like you're so heavily invested in this book and in these characters, and that really shows. And that I think ends up creating better work in general.
Well, we're all friends too. You know, like we've all known each other now for years, and you know, like the idea of like getting together with this particular group of people and working with them has been wonderful, because a lot of the artists that I've worked with on Halloween Man, you know, some of them aren't even from this country. Like I, for years, was working with an artist from Spain. You know, I worked with artists from Brazil and Australia. So they actually have, you know, a group of artists that I can go have a cup of coffee with and actually talk about like their progress. That's really not, I mean, I hope I'm not coming across as I'm knocking any of the other people that I've worked with. I'm not, but you know, there's just been like the camaraderie here has been wonderful.
It's a difference in that if you're able to actually collaborate face to face, it is different than, you know, sending text messages or emails and stuff. It does add another layer to it, and more of a shorthand, I imagine, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how long has this particular special been in the works? Because it sounds like you guys have been kicking this around for a little bit.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, Paulo, but like it's been about like a year, I would say, as far as the gestation process.
Yeah.
Like, because
about a year.
Yeah, we started talking about so there was a Nerd Cave again. It all goes back to Nerd Cave. I came home and, you know, I was talking about, you know, seeing everybody there and everything. And my wife very wisely said, well, why don't you just do an issue of Halloween Man with this group of people? And so like shortly after that, I posted about it on social media and I started reaching out to people and, you know, really trying to make something solid happen. And, the particulars of the timeline, like it starts to get, because we started having like meetings, like at first we would all meet at like a coffee shop called the Buzz Mill that's here in town. And then, later on we started having meetings at my apartment. Like all of that starts to like hit this fever pitch. And, Paulo might have a different experience with it than me, but like this like level of excitement as everybody, like as I started writing all the scripts, as I started seeing the character designs coming in and then meeting with everybody and figuring out the crowdfunding aspects. Like Paulo, like what would you say your like, does that mirror your experience with this at all, or
to me it was more like, because I've tried doing things on my own, like just by myself, and it's really difficult when it's just you. When I was working with everyone and going to the meetings and stuff, and it just felt more like if I started to falter, there was always someone there to pick me up. And it was sort of like we were holding ourselves together and making this happen. And I think the camaraderie of that, it builds on itself, and it starts like it even if it starts out slow, it when you're holding each other up, and like Drew was saying before, we're all our own cheerleaders. You really need that when it comes to this sort of stuff and making comic books. You need someone there to cheer you on, to keep you going. Even if it's just, just like, you got it, you can do this. You show a page, this is what I'm working on. That looks amazing. That looks great, and it just, you need that sort of get up and go. And we were doing that to each other so much so that it just whirlwind into, what it is now. And that's why we're so passionate and we're so like, proud of this accomplishment, because we know how awesome it is and how great how I guess it came from an idea and we made it happen, and it's there now, and it's great. It's fantastic. That was my take on it. Like it was a great camaraderie of friends. I mean, they're all friends that I've had. So building something together was great. And that was my experience from it.
That's awesome. Guys, I don't even know. I don't know what else I could say to possibly top something like that. That's like I said, you could hear the passion in your voices about this. This is clearly something that you guys are heavily invested in, and it shows. So I mean, and the fact that Halloween Man has stood the test of time for almost 2 decades, like this is something that is clearly is worth checking out. I've read a number of the issues myself, including some cool crossovers that you guys have done too. So I mean, this is really cool. So,
which by the way, we have one of the crossovers is the Hack Slash crossover, which we have as a perk.
So that's the whole reason why we're talking about all this stuff. I mean, it's worth checking out, and so you could pick up a lot of these books through Indiegogo as well. I'm gonna have to pick out which perk I want to check out myself in here in just a little bit. But so I think that can kind of wrap us up a little bit. So outside of the Indiegogo campaign, which we'll be linking in the show notes, where are the best places to find you guys online?
So I am on Instagram as Drew_Halloween. I am on Facebook as just Drew Edwards. You can go to find Halloween Man on Facebook. You just at www.halloweenman.com. And I am on DeviantArt as just Drew Edwards. And I am also, I am also a member of the Castle of Horror podcast, which is available basically anywhere you want to listen to a podcast. And that is a weekly horror movie review show, and the next 2 episodes actually are going to be devoted to the Predator films as we gear up for the new Predator movie. So there's a lot of cool stuff to look forward to there.
Cool. And what about you, Paulo?
I mean, you can find me on Instagram. It was kind of an old Instagram, so it's got a weird name, but it's you can find me at PSY55CHO. Or you can go to my website. It's www.psy www.5linegraphics.net, and that pretty much has like some stories that I've been working on myself and my portfolio and a lot of my art. But yeah, that's how you can find me. And on Facebook also, Paulo J. Hernandez. You can find me on that.
Cool. And again, the Indiegogo campaign is still going strong. There's still plenty of time for you to check it out and back and get some of these perks and be a part of the Bat City special for Halloween Man. So, all right, folks, that does it then for this episode of Funny Book Splatter. I have been James Ferguson with my guests, Drew Edwards and Paulo Hernandez. You've been listening to Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. We've been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and much more. Be sure to sign up to Steve's Deals newsletter to increase your horror collection without breaking the bank. Check us out at HorrorTalk.com and at HorrorTalk on Twitter.